Welcome. Rob here with, well, I guess another special part for C64 Month. As it continues to rock on, and you have been spending time for C64, haven't you? Right? I thought I'd do a bit on basically my top 10 games, at least as it stands right now. The reason I say that is simply because these ones that have stood the test of time, I think this is a list of games I probably most enjoyed back in the twilight of my original ownership, my original era of using the machine. And really, in terms of the library, it's got the C64 has such a colossal library that, well, you can only be exposed to, a portion of it. So, most of this year, when I've really been diving hard into collecting games again and playing new ones as I do the videos, there's been more than I would say probably would grow. Who knows? Maybe actually take a spot in a revised list. But this is kind of where I feel right now, based on how things are. If I were to check back in a year, it would probably change quite a bit. So this video is going to be the first half of that list, from number 10 to number 6. Next week I'm going to do the second half, which is that top 5. And hopefully it's a little bit of a blast, As always, hopefully maybe games you may want to check out. So forget that, on with the show and hit it, and I'll start with number 10. Starting out at number 10 is Cyber Warrior from Apex Computer Productions and Houston. Initial first peek as you watch these screens might make you think it's just another run and gun game, but it's actually, you'd be quite wrong there. The main goal is simply to explore these levels, race against the clock, blast the enemies that you find, but most importantly, locating and recovering robots. As you recover these robots, you get cash, which allows you to upgrade your capabilities, and you use those to survive the levels as they get very, very challenging indeed. The controls are really tight. They've always been really well responsive. As you'd expect from a game by Apex, the graphics and music are incredible, well presented, nice and colourful, and it's one of these games that you just play a few rounds of, have a quick play, and it's really solid fun. It's a good challenge. It's one of these ones where you can sort of see where you got lost and got things wrong, and you come back and continue to try again and again and see if you can actually beat it. I may not have been able to finish it back in the day, but I got quite a way into it, and even playing it again, in recent months has been like one that's just like fire it up, have a few plays, and have a good session out of it. Now on to number 9, and that's the Llamasoft Classic Parallax. Out of all of Jeff's games that I've played back in the day, I think it sticks out the most, and that's simply because rather than being just a simple, straightforward game, it's actually a collection of 5 and a cut-down version of one of his light synth tools, 5 little mini-games. Each of them is sort of, in terms of the game's narrative, they're all different parts of this larger battle. Now, they range from fairly straightforward blasting fests to one's a reaction test, a very challenging reaction test where you've got to sort of like match the patterns that are coming up on screen. And one's a very weird logic puzzle where you're trying to slow down some items by trying to reverse their movement speeds, and involves a sort of faux platformer. And they're all really ranging between fairly standard fare to some pretty big mind twisters. One of the things that's really impressive with it is that you don't just play each game in sequence. You actually can switch between them at any time. So you just hit the game's designated key on the keyboard. It just pauses the game you're playing, jumps to the next one, and you pick up right where you last saw it, or at the start if you haven't played it before. And also, the difficulty system. Most games, the difficulty ramps up as you play through based on, what level you're in, what position, what part of the game you're in. Here, it's all based on time. Rather than having lives, rather than having continues or anything, you have a countdown timer that varies based on how long you have left. So you set the difficulty level to control how long you have to play. And as you play through the game gets harder based on that. And so you can actually sit down and try to go through all the 5 sub-games, or you can just focus on getting a good score in one of them to practice. And I really like that freedom of how that works. Now on to number 8, Sensible Software's Parallax. So named because it was one of the first 64 games to really use parallax scrolling in its background graphics. Here you're stranded on an alien world, and the basic idea is to explore each of the levels and reconstruct an access password. Constructing that access password allows you to move on to the next one, and when you move through them all, you're able to escape the planet. I've never gotten far enough to do that, but that's the basic concept. So the main gameplay involves you zipping around each level in your fighter, landing and locating enemy buildings where scientists are held. And these scientists will usually carry a pass card, and hopefully you need to find the ones that have each of the 5 pass cards that construct the phrase for that level. And then once you do that, you're able to move on through the checkpoint and onto the next section. What I really dig about it is, you've got this sort of frantic aerial battling against alien drones, and then you're on foot, and you explore, you're searching buildings, buying, getting money to use to buy equipment, being able to, hunting these scientists, getting their pass cards, and so on. And when you're on the ground, you get a nice little chilled bit of music as well. But as you'd expect for an early sensible game, controls are tight, graphics are great, and there is a killer soundtrack. And it's one of the most, actually that title theme is one of the most epic ones in the library. And what I love is just the way it all comes together, that these sort of like slight twists in the gameplay come together, give you an excellent, action experience. Now on to road with number 7, and that's Probe's conversion of Turbo Outrun, which was published by US Gold. Easily, out of all the arcade races that got converted to C64, easily the slickest one of the lot. Whilst that great presentation did result in a heavy multi-load, I still put it here because growing up, I actually have the disc copy. So, the loading was bad, but it could have been worse. I do have to feel for anyone who ever had this on tape. One of the things is that it's sort of that twist on making concessions to the design when converting for the sake of playability. Some of the levels don't quite do things that the arcade and other conversions did, but a result of that was something that was a lot more fast and fluid, within the C64's capabilities, and made the game a lot more playable as a result. As I've said, the presentation is amazing. It's got some of the best music I think I've heard on the C64. The graphics are great, they look great, they're colourful, there's no flicker that you would expect in a lot of these kind of games. And it's a good amount of challenge, and you can sort of tell it's well designed because there are plenty of moments when I've been playing it that I've come to a checkpoint right as time has started running out. I've heard the droning game over tone, and it's like, and I roll over a checkpoint, and it's sort of how tight it plays. Still one of my favourite races on the machine. Going back out into space for number 6, we've got the spectacular strafe 'em up Iridium by Graph Gold and Hewson. One of the clear designs that was aimed for when designing it back in the day was to bring a frenetic arcade experience onto the C64. At that point, there still weren't a lot of games that were really doing the very smooth 50Hz scrolling on PAL machines. And so by getting that, it gave that playability and control. And I came to this a little later, and I'd seen plenty of other games doing that smooth scrolling, but for some reason, the moment I saw the title text scrolling across, those giant letters scrolling across, I knew there was something special about it. The gameplay, it might just be another shoot 'em up, dodging wave of fighters, avoiding the dreaded Eureka mines, and the superstructure, as well as avoiding the superstructure of each of these super dreadnoughts. There is some incredibly frenetic action. The controls are perfectly responsive. You do feel having that responsive control. And there's some excellent pacing. You fight formation, brief wait, another formation, and you keep going into, hovering, waiting tensely for land now to appear and finding the safe spot to land to complete the stage. And it's just a brilliant piece of action all round. One that is significantly recommended, as one I do always enjoy picking up and playing whenever I get the chance every so often.